Hello and welcome to discussion today on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Tina Jha. Employees may soon have an option to work for 4 days a week in the country. The Union Ministry of Labour and Employment is working to roll out the new labour codes where it proposes flexibility to companies to reduce the number of working days to 4 days a week. However, the cap on working hours of 48 hours per week will remain sacrosanct. Labour and Employment Secretary Apurva Chandra informed on Monday that organizations would have 3 choices: deploying employees for 4 days at 12 hours per day, 5 days at around 10 hours per day, and 6 days at 8 hours per day. So those working for 4 days will have to be given 3 days off by their employers, while those working for 5 days will have to be given 2 off days before they move on to the next working week. And the employers or the employees will not be forced to comply with the provision. As per the government, the move is aimed at providing flexibility and to be in sync with the changing work culture in the country. So on this edition of discussion today, we will be talking about the 4-day work per week provision in the new labour code, whether and how this flexibility is going to help the employees as well as the employers, and of course the challenges going forward in effective implementation of the new labour codes. And for this, we are joined by 2 eminent guests on the program. Let me introduce them to you. We have with us Mr. Sandeep Agarwal. He is Chairman, Industry Affairs Committee, the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And Mr. P.P. Mitra, former Principal Advisor, Labour and Employment, the Ministry of Labour and Employment, Government of India. Welcome, gentlemen, to discussion today on Rajya Sabha TV. Mr. Mitra, let me begin the program today with your views on the flexible working hours for the employees. How is it going to be beneficial for them?
Yeah, prima facie, I think it's a very innovative approach which the ministry has adopted, giving the choice of flexibility to the employers and the employees. I think this needs to be welcome. Yes. Because in the Occupational Safety and Health Code and Working Conditions, if you care to see, Chapter 7 mentions about the hours of work. Sections 25 and Sections 30, they need to be reconciled, and that has been done. Section 25 mentions about 8 hours of work a day, and then Section 30 mentions about that no employee can work 12 hours if he has worked for 12 hours in the preceding 12 hours, which means that effectively he can work for 12 hours. Now, this has to be kind of harmoniously reconciled, which I think the ministry has made an attempt by giving the choice, the 3 choices which you have mentioned, 4 days, 12 hours, 5 days, 10 hours, 6 days, 8 hours. So the overall limit of 48 hours and the weekly offs have been retained. Now it's for the employees and the employees to choose the option. But my only concern is that while choices are given, the Occupational Safety and Health Code also mentions about the safety and health of workers. Maybe the workers agree to this 12-hour schedule, or maybe they agree to the 10-hour schedule, but then at the same time, one needs to be keep in mind the working conditions, the difficult working conditions in industries where, on the shop floor particularly. So those aspects would need to be taken care of. But Absolutely. Then at the same time, the workforce, as you are aware that in the pandemic times and post-pandemic, there has been a sea change in the working atmosphere, in the workplace. More of work from home, flexible working environment has come in. More of gig workers, who kind of workers on their own, who choose to kind of not have a particular employer, but work in different locations. So maybe these flexible working conditions would be helpful for the gig workers and the persons, particularly in the software sector, who choose to work from home. But then for the shop floor workers, for the workers in the hard industries, as I call them, I think these options would need to be exercised very carefully.
Yes, absolutely. And how harmoniously this is done between the employees and the employers is obviously going forward going to be seen. But from the industry point of view, Mr. Agarwal, how is this provision in the labour code going to help the companies, the organizations?
Actually, this is the correct way. I don't think the government is looking for 4 12-hour shifts or 10. It is basically 48 hours and maximum 12 hours.
Yes.
The rest is adjustable between the labor and the company. How we divide 10 hours, 11 hours, whatever the companies decide. And I think this flexibility is extremely important because India needs to be internationally competitive. You know, the views of labor unions, we believe, the chamber also believes that yes, labor unions are very important because they guide and tell wherever the industry is wrong and also the labor when they are not moving correctly. But sometimes the views of labor unions are different from what the labor wants. The labor actually wants in the industry, that is the truth of the matter. We may try not to see it. The truth of the matter is that the labor wants more hours of working. They want to actually, you know, if they get 12 shifts, 4 days, 12-hour shifts, probably the 3 days they will not sit idle. They are going to somewhere else and do their some own business. But they will still work. Mm-hmm. Indians are hardworking people and we have been working like that, and that is the only way because India does not have much of a capital. When we look into Finland or UK or Europe, they are high on capital. So they can have less labor content, or even if the labor cost is very high, the productivity being high because of the capital expenditure they have already put in their equipments, they are able to take that out. Indian companies cannot do that. We need to work in a way that Indian economy grows. I believe the government has come out with this policy, which is quite good. And we believe further, the unions will understand the benefit to the employees. And as my good friend Mitraji also said, that with whatever has happened during the pandemic has changed the view. Even the industry had a view probably that this may not be a good idea in some places. But now it seems to be a very good idea because flexibility of labor timing has become very important. I should be able to ask my employees to flexibly come at various points of time, and the staff should also be allowed to do that. Yes, I only believe there is one question, that if there is a dispute between what I want and what my employee wants, then how will we come to a settlement on that?
Yes.
I want 6 days, 8 hours. He wants only to do 12 hours, 4 days. Now, many of the companies or offices will not like to do 12 hours. Which office will want to do 12 hours? So there can be some issues, but I believe the court will have the remedies to that. There should not be a major problem. And I believe the industry is going to wholeheartedly accept this new code. And also the unions should do that the same. That's what I believe.
Okay. So I'll take the question on dispute and the remedy that could, take that into account to Mr. Mitra. But Mr. Agarwal, one question before I move on. Do you also believe that this provision could also enhance productivity and lessen the cost of companies? Because, a very interesting case study that I came across during the course of my research was that Microsoft took this very unique initiative for its employees in Japan, and where they were working 4 days and 3 days they were on leave, and the productivity of the company obviously increased, the cost of the company reduced. So if that is replicated in our country, in the Indian context, do you think that could be possible here as well?
See, Microsoft issues in the IT industry cannot be duplicated in the industrial environment in India or in terms of even shops. Now, IT companies, they may be giving their employees maybe flexible working hours, but they work 24 hours a day. But a shop in Karol Bagh or Connaught Place has to open for fixed number of hours. And in that is the flexibility of work is given, and half the time the worker is not available, you are not able to sell, the shops are going to close down. Similarly, the industry, there is a minimum number of people in an organization that will be required. But in 60% of our industry, the maximum number of strength is 3 people. So if in 60% of our industry, only 3 people are there, including offices and sales outlets, then how are they going to accept a flexible working hour? Manager is coming sometimes different time and the worker is coming some different time. Nobody is matching the time and nothing is going to happen. So yes, in organized sector, what we are saying, what Microsoft did is a very good idea. We cannot hold organized sector, unorganized sector, shops and offices with the same brush. We cannot paint them with the same brush. We need to work in a different way. So the code, when it comes out, should be able to discern between all these. Okay. I believe the government is working towards it, and whatever should come out should be reasonable, because due thought has been given. But probably the ideas which is coming out of this interaction today will also go, because whenever PhD has given new ideas, they have been taken up by government. So we believe whatever we are talking today will be taken up by the government positively.
All right. So there has to be a different approach when it comes to organized and unorganized sector. Mr. Mitra, a very valid point raised by Mr. Agarwal earlier in the answer was about dispute resolution. Of course, with the 12 working hours, the government says it has to be with consent. But going ahead, this could be a matter of dispute. So how then can this be resolved? What is the remedy to this whole problem that could we could face in the coming times?
Yeah, dispute resolution has been a traditional aspect of industrial relations. The Industrial Disputes Act of 1948 mentions about it. So now what has happened is that this entire framework has been co-opted into the Industrial Relations Code, where various forums have been mentioned, particularly the internal grievance redressal machinery has been prescribed for establishments having 20 or more workers, with the grievance redressal committee consisting of 10 workers or employees, 10 employees and employers with equal representation from both the sides, with adequate representation of women. So the grievance redressal aspect, government has been well taken care of by through these redressal mechanisms. Then in the larger establishments, we have the works committees and also the safety committees in establishments where the safety aspect is involved. So what I mean to say is that the forums where workers and employers interact is necessary, and all grievances, this is a time-tested axiom that all grievances should be discussed upfront, brought on the table, and suitably resolved. Even if the internal grievance redressal machinery is not able to resolve the situation, we have the elaborate industrial relations machinery, the so-called labor enforcement machinery, which comes into conciliation. They try to conciliate between the various different parties, where the trade unions also play an active role, because the dispute has to be the grievance has to be rooted through the trade union. So adequate representation provision has been made. And then there is something very unique which has happened this time, is the existence of a negotiating council. The negotiating council was earlier not there in the industrial relations framework. So what the Industrial Relations Code provides for is a negotiating council, so that there is a forum where if there is a majority union that could negotiate on behalf of the workers and the employers, so that the grievances, to a large extent, the wage-related grievances are resolved to a large extent, because this used to be a bone of contention earlier, and courts had to intervene, because the Central Industrial Relations Machinery, CIRM, which is housed in the Ministry of Labour under the Chief Labour Commissioner, we did not have an adequate forum at the central level. We often had to resort to the states. For instance, Maharashtra has grievance redressal machinery. So the establishments of central establishments which are located in Maharashtra had to take recourse to the state legislation there. So this issue has been resolved to a large extent, which is only adding to the harmonious industrial relations between the employers and the employees. And I think I will slightly disagree with Mr. Agarwal in the sense that the unions also have a very important role to play, because without the unions, we will not be able to carry the vast workforce, particularly in the organized sector of the Indian workforce along with us, if the larger companies are going to benefit from the bipartite kind of a relationship. So the unions will have to be brought on board. And the Labour Ministry has been doing this through the various tripartite committees, because tripartism is a mechanism through which all major labor legislations, policy issues are taken. Unless it is kind of, a consensual approach is evolved through the tripartite mechanism where the government, the employers and the employees participate, we feel that, the policy making process is not complete. Yes. So one may kind of say that, well, the tripartism needs to be strengthened in this country. I think government is quite conscious of this fact. So all major decisions are taken in a tripartite framework, and the various grievance redressal mechanism is an offshoot of this tripartism, where, of course, the government doesn't interfere in the working of the individual establishments. It has to be a bipartite kind of a mechanism through the internal grievance redressal. If this internal grievance redressal does not come into play or does not succeed, then, of course, the conciliation machinery intervenes, where the government willy-nilly has to come in the picture. If even that is not kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, then probably it will go to the labor courts. And labor courts, mind you, the tribunals which the central government and the states have, that should be the last resort, because then the dispute goes on for years.
Yes, and so that, of course, is a very, very tedious process as well.
So that is why there is so much of emphasis on the internal grievance redressal mechanism, so that the disputes, the differences are settled in-house.
Yes, the internal mechanisms have to be strengthened as well if you want effective implementation of the new rules. Mr. Agarwal, another thing that you pointed out, and obviously Mr. Mitra would also agree, is Indians, of course, are very, very hardworking. But at times, this becomes one reason for them to be exploited as well, especially if we talk from the context of the contract workers. They always have this threat of losing their jobs. So when we talk about a consensual approach that they do not have to work beyond 12 hours, or, who regulates or who monitors that they actually are not exploited? How can this procedure be made more transparent and something which is, humane as well?
Ma'am, the most important thing, is required to be having a social security norms. Now, we should have a pension fund which should be available to them. Actually, any labor, they should be able to get that pension at after the age of 60. Now, how to do it is, whatever they are working, the pension which is cut, a part of it is part of the law anyways. But what happens is that labor is allowed to take the money out, and then when it really comes at the 60 years age, when there is nobody, not even their children are ready to support them, the companies in which they were working have already thrown them out. So they have no money and no food and nothing to live upon. That is the real exploitation. So what we want is, the industry would really want it, that the money which the company pays in the public provident fund, that money should not be taken out by the employees at any point of time, and it should come to them only as their monthly income after their retirement of 60. Now, earlier it was difficult because people were jumping jobs, and it was very difficult to change from one account to another. But now it is one account, one country, so there is no problem.
Yes.
Once you have working in any company, do not need to change your account, and that will become the really important aspect. If that is happening, the exploitation is not there. And then I do not believe that working for 48 hours in a day is exploitation. But if you talk about people in UK and Europe, they want to work 38 hours a day. Now, for them, 48 hours could be exploitation. But is it so? Now, India is competing, Indian textile industry is competing against Bangladesh. Now, what has happened is, over a period of time, with all the laws being tightened, the textile industry is losing its business. The textile industry business has all been transferred to Vietnam and mostly to Bangladesh. Now, how is ultimately you need to pay them salary. Now, if the industry closes down and it is not able to pay them salary itself, then will that be a bigger problem than having a reasonable salary and a reasonable number of working hours? We can reduce number of working hours, but the amount which will go to the employee will be less because the industry can only pay that much. It is the competition in the world is so much that if you pay more than that, probably you'll be out of business. IT industry, as we said, organized sector, certain organized sectors are different. We have to compare them and work differently on each one of them.
Okay.
Agricultural worker cannot be compared.
But Mr. Mitra, all of this that is being talked about, easier said than done, because going forward, the challenges are going to be abound. What are the problems that, apart from disputes on the flexible working hours, what are the other problems that we could face when the new rules, are implemented? And what is the best way forward then to actually resolve them? Internal redressal mechanisms you pointed out, but beyond that, what else needs to be done from the side of the government?
Yeah, you have rightly said that the 4 labor codes, enforcement of these codes is an area where the problems of implementation would be there. I think the government is quite keen and aware of this, keen to resolve and aware of this situation. What has happened is, in the meanwhile, there has been a lot of emphasis on e-governance. E-governance in the sense that there would be transparency and there would be the working through the portals. Now, you have rightly mentioned that in any initial kind of a transformative approach, particularly in a vast country like India, where we have almost 93% of our workforce as unorganized, emphasis on e-governance is going to be difficult. As Mr. Agarwal has rightly mentioned, particularly on the Provident Fund issue, the Social Security issue earlier, workers faced a lot of problems getting their money out. And in fact, there has been a clamor that the so-called low-income categories of workers were not too keen to contribute their money in the Provident Fund simply because they had the kind of mistaken notion that once money goes, will not come back to them. Now, to a large extent, I think with the emphasis on e-governance, I think these problems are going to be resolved, particularly the portability of the Provident Fund accounts. If I change a job, then I would take that amount and the number with me to that different establishments. This is a major step. But yes, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. We need to kind of bring this paradigm shift very effectively. So that is where I think the enforcement mechanism, the enforcement of labor codes is going to play a very important role. But nonetheless, having said this, is a very major step that the government has taken, but it now remains to be seen to what extent the benefits of Social Security, which Mr. Agarwal has rightly mentioned, percolates down to the society, particularly the unorganized workforce. As I said, they constitute the vast majority of our workforce, and the social security of the unorganized workers is paramount. And the Social Securities Code has kind of fallen a little short of the universalization of the Social Security, which many policy commentators have said that this should have been the mandate. But then the government has said that they are going to draw up schemes. The recognition of the gig workers has been mentioned, has been given in the code. And more important, to come to this issue of contract workers and casual workers, let me tell you that their very existence was not there in many of the establishments. Now, under the Occupational OSH code, each employee has to be given an appointment letter. So at least the existence of this person comes into being on paper, which is a very major step, because this has not been happening in the Indian industrial scenario. So I think this is a major step. Again, there is an implementation issue, which we need to kind of carry it forward, and the enforcement, a lot will depend on the enforcement machinery, the role of the trade unions, and of course the benevolence and the helping attitude, I would say, the kind of partnership attitude with the employers will have to kind of show, because after all, it is not a one-sum game. The two have to combine.
And that is where a fine balancing is also required between all those involved, particularly between the employees and the employers. Mr. Agarwal, so when we talk about effective implementation of these new codes, which the government says is going to be in sync with the changing work culture in the country, obviously for it to be successful, there is a very, very fine balancing that is required. So going forward, what are the suggestions for this that you would make?
I believe inputs from the unions, from the industry, and the state governments is very much important, because otherwise there could be disputes not only between the industry and the unions, but also the state and the center. And although it says, the law says that the central law will prevail, but sometimes it is not so easy to discern what prevails and what does not prevail. So I believe that proper discussions are made before these laws are formalized and made into these laws. And we believe that once that is there, and tribunals and dispute mechanisms within the company, as Mitraji also said, they are very important. We need to work together, because code of laws, we know that they are too busy. It will take 20 years for any dispute to be resolved. And a poor worker or even the industry will lose out whatever their money is. And the business will probably shut down, and the poor worker may even die without food. So everybody is a loser. So what we need to do is, in our chamber, like PSG chamber, we have dispute mechanisms, resolution mechanisms. We have people who are ready to provide that kind of services. And we believe that the chambers and the unions both should provide these kind of services, that wherever any dispute arises, they should be able to take up the matter, and together they should be able to resolve. Similarly, labor courts are there, but labor commissioner office is there, and they are able to handle the situation most of the time. And we have personally seen it, the people working very hard in the government to resolve the disputes between the industry and the workers. So we believe that whatever does not go to court, and the law should be such that very little should be able to actually go to the court. The rest should be resolved between the parties through arbitration or through discussions within tripartite or bipartite system.
That's right.
That is how we are going to...
The focus should, of course, be on, benefiting the employees, providing them with good working conditions. And, of course, if at all a dispute arises, it should be resolved without any hassles. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program today and putting things into perspective for us and our viewers. Pleasure having you on the program. So with that, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of Discussion Today. Let me remind my viewers that just in case you missed the television broadcast, you can also watch it on YouTube, and you can also send in your feedback and suggestions as well. Thank you for your time.